This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. Today is Tuesday, so we're going to continue our Tuesday Build a Deck series, building around Sisay, Weatherlight Captain, in an EDH Enchantment Matters deck. Hello and welcome back, fans of MTG Burgeoning. If you missed any of our previous installments in this series, you can click on the links below in the description and bring you right up to speed. We are continuing our series and building an Enchantment Matters EDH deck around Sisay, Weatherlight Captain. So let's take a quick, very brief review of the cards already added to this deck. Enlightened Tutor, Sterling Grove, Plea for Guidance, Cetizen Champion, Eidolon of Blossoms, Greater Oromancy, Sphere of Safety, Gen Arcanum Weaver, Hannah Ship's Navigator, Zur the Enchanter, Calyx Destiny's Hand, Dance of the Mance, Honden of Cleansing Fire, Honden of Seeing Winds, Honden of Night's Reach, Honden of Infinite Rage, Honden of Life's Web, Sanctum of Tranquil Light, Sanctum of Calm Waters, Sanctum of Stone Fangs, Sanctum of Shattered Heights, Sanctum of Fruitful Harvest, and Sanctum of All. Those are the cards already included in this build. And now we are going to move on to the next cycle of cards, and I think it is time for us to put some creatures into this deck. We need a way in which to protect our Sisay when she's out there on the battlefield. So let's throw in, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 creatures here. We got a stack of 14 creatures that we're going to add to this deck during this video right now. But folks, fans of MTG Burgeoning, if you've been a fan of this channel long enough, you know that these just aren't going to be quote-unquote creatures. They're going to be a bit more. We're building an Enchantment Matters deck. So each of the following creatures, although they are creatures, they're also going to be enchantments. They're also going to be legendary. They're also going to be gods. That's right, folks. We are adding 14 of the legendary enchantment creature gods from all blocks of Theros. Let's get started because we want to make sure that with Sisay's ability, searching our library for a legendary permanent card, we are able to incorporate the permanent being legendary in addition to being an enchantment. So the following 14 cards are the best 14 enchantment gods I selected to be put into this Enchantment Matters EDH deck. God number 1, Heliod, God of the Sun. 3 and a white, 5/6 indestructible. It's not a god. It's not a creature unless its devotion to 5 is met. Other creatures we control have vigilance, and we can tap 2 and 2 white to create a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token. 5/6 for 3 and a white is a nice spread and a fantastic return on investment. God number 2, sticking with original Theros, Thassa, God of the Sea. If you thought 5/6 for 4 CMC was good, here's a 5/5 for 3. And of course, Thassa is indestructible. She's only a creature if our devotion to blue is 5 or higher. At the beginning of our upkeep, we scry 1. More importantly, however, for a white and a blue, target creature we control is unblockable this turn. Thassa is God number 2. Number 3, staying with Theros, of course, is Erebus, God of the Dead. 3 and a black for a 5/7. And of course, indestructible. And of course, the devotion to 5 is the trigger to make Erebus a creature. Our opponents cannot gain life, and we can tap 1 and a black, pay 2 life, and draw a card. Erebus is God number 3. All right, and moving right down the line and staying right in the path of order and symmetry. You know who's coming up next, folks. P. Diddy, God of the Forge. 3 in a red, 6/5 indestructible. Same thing with the devotion. If it's 5 or less in red, Perforos is not a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, Perforos will deal 2 damage to each opponent. And in a much unheralded ability, every 2 in a red that we pump into Perforos gives creatures we control +1/+0 until end of turn. So let's keep that in mind as we're continuing to build this deck. Perforos is god number 4. Rounding out our monocolored Theros gods is going to be Nylea, God of the Hunt. 3 in a green, 6/6 indestructible. And of course, if devotion to green is 5 or less, Nylea is not a creature. Other creatures we control have trample, and for every 3 in a green we pay into her, target creature will get +2/+2 until end of turn. Note that it says target creature and not target creature we control. So there is a particular element of politicking involved with casting and putting into play Nylea, God of the Hunt. So the first 5 of our 14 gods are the 5 original Theros gods. So now we move into Born of the Gods territory, and the first god that we are going to include is Ephara, God of the Polis. 2 white and a blue. She's a 6/5 indestructible god. Because these gods have multiple colors, their devotion is up from 5 in a monocolor to 7 in Azorius colors. That's white and blue, folks. At the beginning of each upkeep, if we had another creature enter the battlefield under our control last turn, we draw a card. This is a great pairing when we have Ephara and Heliod out in the play, tapping 2 and 2 white to create an enchantment creature token, and then drawing a card during the next turn. All right, Ephara is god number 1 from Born of the Gods, but not the last, because here comes god number 2, and that's going to be Mogis, God of Slaughter. 2 black and a red for a 7/5. Devotion to Rakdos is 7, of course, and when that triggers, he becomes a creature. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, Mogis will deal 2 damage to that player unless he or she sacrifices a creature. Initially, I understand the trepidation of including this creature into this deck. I mean, this is Commander. Everyone's starting with 40 life. However, having an indestructible enchantment on the battlefield that will make an opponent lose 2 life unless they sacrifice a creature, if it gets out there early enough, the damage piles up. Trust me, I've seen it. I've been victim to it. Mogis is sneaky good in this format, and I'm happy to include him in this Enchantments Matter deck. The last Born of the Gods god that we are going to include is Karametra, God of Harvests. 3 green and a white, 6/7 indestructible, and her devotion to Selesnya must be 7 or higher for Karametra to become a creature. Whenever we cast a creature spell, we may search our library for a forest or plains card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. So Karametra allows us to ramp up by getting forest cards and or plains cards out onto the battlefield whenever we cast a creature spell. So Karametra is a great god to add. It'll just sit there on the battlefield and allow us to ramp whenever we cast a creature spell. All right, so we are now shifting our focus, moving away from Born of the Gods and moving into Journey into Nyx. And the first Journey into Nyx god we are going to include in this deck is the Boros god Iroas, God of Victory. 7/4 indestructible with devotion of 7 being the trigger to make Iroas a creature. Creatures we control have menace, and we prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures we control. Iroas is a fantastic creature to include in a deck, and we are going to look to him to help us close out games once we get it onto the battlefield. The only other god that's going to make an appearance in this deck from Journey into Nyx other than Iroas is going to be Pharika, God of Affliction. For just 1 black and a green, we get a 5/5 indestructible god The devotion to Golgari, of course, is 7, and when we meet that criteria, Pharika becomes a creature. However, the more important ability is black and a green, and we exile target creature card from a graveyard. It's important to note that this isn't just from our graveyard, this is from a graveyard. Any graveyard, particularly any of our opponents' graveyards who may be trying to, I don't know, use their graveyards to try to win the game, like that ever happens in Commander, right? So when we exile a creature card from a graveyard, its owner puts a 1/1 black and green snake enchantment creature token with death touch onto the battlefield. So although we could target our opponent's graveyards with this, Pharika also has the synergy of putting into play an enchantment creature token, which will help trigger a Farah, in addition to some of the cards already included in this deck. All right, and now we are moving to Theros Beyond Death. We have our first 10 gods. There are 4 gods left to include, and the first one is going to be Heliod Suncrown. We're going back to devotion being at least 5 for each of these monocolored gods. Heliod's 2 and a white for 5/5. And whenever we gain life, we'll put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment we control. That's important to note considering how many enchantment creatures we will have that are just waiting to have their devotion met. We can tap 1 and a white, and another target creature gains lifelink until end of turn. That's a fantastic ability because if we're not trying to build a lifelink deck, Heliod comes equipped with the ability to do so. Heliod is god number 11. Next up, we are including Thassa Deep Dwelling. 3 and a blue, indestructible 6/5, of course, devotion of 5. And at the beginning of our end step, exile up to 1 other target creature we control, then return that card to the battlefield under our control. So this will be a very good synergistic card with any of the cards that we have on our deck that say, whenever an enchantment comes into play under your control, draw a card. So Thassa Deep Dwelling allows us to somewhat abuse that card drawing engine. Additionally, by tapping 3 and a blue, we can tap another target creature. Mid to late game, that could be very valuable if we're trying to stave off elimination through lethal combat damage. 2 gods left. God number 13, Perforos Bronze-Blooded. 4 and a red for a 7/6 indestructible body, giving other creatures we control haste, and of course the devotion of 5. For 2 and a red, we may put a red creature card or an artifact creature card from our hand onto the battlefield, and then sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So with some of our graveyard recursion spells and creatures we have already included in this deck, utilizing Perforos's sneak attack-like ability to get a red creature into play that eventually will then be sacrificed, only for us to bring back into play through maybe Gen Arcanum Weaver or back to our hand with Hannah Ship's Navigator. Perforos Bronze-Blooded is a very sneaky addition to this deck, and let's not by any means overlook the haste capability, because as the series moves on, that's going to be one of the ways in which we end games. And that is lucky number 13. We're down to 1 more god, folks. God number 14, the last of our enchantment Theros legendary creature gods to include in this deck. And that is going to be 1 copy of Nylea Keen-Eyed. 3 and a green, a 5/6 indestructible, of course, devotion of 5. Creature spells we cast cost 1 less to cast, so it reduces the CMC of our creatures, which is just aces in our book. Plus, we can tap 2 and a green to reveal the top card of our library. If it's a creature card, we put it into our hand. Otherwise, we put it into our graveyard. Again, the potential for that graveyard recursion theme that we built into the deck previously is really going to pay some dividends if we have Nylea Keen-Eyed out on the battlefield. And that is going to do it for this video, folks. Those are the next 14 cards to be included in this deck. And they're all creatures, and they're still staying within the realm of enchantments matter. So, let's continue with our deck building series by leaving some suggestions in the comment section below. Do we move on to ramp, or do we go back to some more enchantment specific or enchantment matter spells? Let me know in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.